Hello, hello. Am I audible to you?
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, any questions that you have before we start?
Nope, I'm good to go.
Okay, just one question I have. How should I pronounce your name? I don't want to mispronounce it in any way, so just asking.
Yeah, so it's Bonnie D. Arcangelo.
Okay. That's great. That's such a beautiful name. And yeah, I'll just take a pause and then introduce you to the listeners, and then we may start, right?
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Welcome to Divine Decode, the space where we unravel soul truths and decode divine wisdom. I'm Pragya, your host, and I cannot wait for you to meet today's guest because she is pure magic. Joining us is Bonnie D. Arcangelo, a clinical herbalist, certified aromatherapist, and honestly, a true earth whisperer. Her work bridges ancient plant wisdom with modern healing science, and today she is here to help us explore what it really means to awaken your inner healer. So, if you've ever wondered how to stop outsourcing your healing and start trusting your body's own intelligence, grab your tea, breathe deep, and let's dive in. Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure too. Okay, let's start here. When you say awakening your inner healer, that feels so big and beautiful. What does that actually mean to you in real life?
To me, that means listening to your inner voice and honoring it. And sometimes that takes time to awaken that voice because we have silenced it and dulled it in our modern society. And I always tell people it starts with the subtle little things, especially as you listen to that voice more and more. It'll help you through your day in the most unique ways. So sometimes I'll be walking through my house and I'll be going from one room to the next, and the little voice in my head will say, "Grab a piece of paper and pen." And I'll think to myself, "Well, I don't need a piece of paper and pen. Why should I grab one?" And about 10 or 15 minutes later, I'll get a phone call and I'll need a piece of paper and a pen to write down some information. And so listening to our inner voice and listening to our inner healer can start with the most subtle things, like that voice that tells you to grab a pen. And the more we listen to those prompts, the more we can listen to some of the greater prompts, and those become our path to our healing.
That's great. How beautifully you put it. And was there also a moment where this clicked for you, like a point where you thought, okay, this isn't just a theory. This is my truth, and this is what I would love to tell people too.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we have to find that inner truth because we've been raised a certain way, we've been told certain things about ourselves, and those things are not necessarily what are true and resonate. And it takes time to unwind and work backwards through all of those things that we've been told and that we've been taught to find our path. And it starts with recognizing what is true to us or not. If you've been told your whole life, let's make something simple. If you've been told your whole life that you're stupid and you're never going to amount to anything, most likely you have not amounted to anything in your life. And so unwinding that would look like, no, I have value and I'm going to find what that value is for the world because everybody came here into this world with a purpose and a mission. And sometimes it's harder for us to find out what that is because we have all of these external inputs that have misguided us from our true purpose. And so sometimes we have to find what that loudest voice in our head is that is our worst enemy and talk back to that voice. I've heard people say that sometimes you should name that voice in your head, give it a name, call it Becky or something, And whenever Becky is talking to you and saying things that you don't like, you can say, Becky, not today. I'm not going to listen to you. Today, I'm going to live my own path. And sometimes it helps to recognize that there are other voices that are not necessarily for our best interests that are inside of ourselves. And we have to learn to silence those so that our true voice can start to emerge. And our true voice is always this quiet little whisper that is waiting for us to listen and waiting for us to silence all the other noise that is external and internal so that we can hear its voice.
I love that, and how beautifully you've, just given us the difference. And yeah, I love that. Also, you work with plants on such an intimate level, and honestly, that feels so primal and grounding. How do you see herbs helping us remember that inner wisdom within us? How do you see that?
I think it starts with recognizing that the plants are conscious living beings. Their consciousness just looks different than ours. And when we start to recognize that the earth, our great mother, has given everything we need here upon this earth, and that we don't need to turn to a lab to create synthetic chemicals to heal ourselves, that everything we need is there. And when we can start really connecting with the plants and bringing them into our lives as our allies, that's when they really become the medicine. And I had a client in my office just yesterday, and I was talking to them about herbs, and they really wanted to find a way to integrate it into their lives. So I took them out to my gardens and we pulled a few plants from the ground, and we went back into, um, I guess we could call it my lab because I have a laboratory, my lab. And we started chopping up the herbs and putting them in a jar and then covered them with vinegar. And I was teaching them how to make a vinegar extract of an herb, because when you put the herbs in vinegar instead of alcohol or other extract mediums, the vinegar really pulls all of the minerals, and it can be highly nutritious to drink the vinegar that has had herbs soaked in it. And one of the comments and the reason for telling this that my client said to me is, they said, it's just so magical seeing how you walk through the garden and know every single one of the plants and can just so skillfully pull them and then put them together into something that's so beautiful. And that's the point of this, is that when you get to know the plants and you can walk through nature and know and have a relationship with them. Like, I know the benefits of the plants in my garden, but I also have a relationship with them and they know me. And when you can start to kind of bridge that gap, you can start to have herbal medicine in your daily life as just part of a natural existence. Herbal medicine doesn't have to be extremely complicated, like finding the right supplement or a tincture or a pill or this or that. It can be as simple as, grabbing some dandelion greens that are growing in your garden that are highly nutritious and putting them in some vinegar and soaking them and drinking that vinegar. And so I love the blend between simplicity of just going out in nature and picking some leaves from a plant, and then also the complexity of understanding an interrelationship between maybe 7 to 10 herbs in an herbal formula, and the ability to craft those into a really potent healing medicine for people.
That's so beautiful, and yeah, great work, and love that, love that. Also, for someone who is listening, who is just, dipping their toes in, maybe they're like, succulents. Where do I even start? What are a couple of beginner-friendly plants or rituals you'd suggest to them?
So it's going to vary between which region of the world you're in and what is available to you. So I'll first start by saying, you go out into nature, look at what's growing around you. And sometimes some of the most beneficial plants are what we would call weeds. So here in the US, the dandelions are the arch enemy of many people who are trying to maintain a manicured lawn. Of course, I love the dandelion plant because I know every part of that plant has medicinal properties, from the flower to the leaves to the roots. And I also know that the dandelion is nature fighting back, but not fighting in a way that you think like fist fights and wars. Fighting back in a way that is really, really beneficial, because the dandelion grows in hospitable places where the calcium needs to be fixed in the soil. And the dandelion plant has the ability to pull that calcium from the atmosphere and from the ground and anchor it into the soil in a way that heals what's been damaged by men and women, by humans. And nature has this beautiful ability to have what we call weeds. And these weeds have a purpose to heal the soil, but those weeds also have a lot of medicinal benefits for us as well. And so I encourage people to go out into nature, into their own personal yard, into their local park, wherever you need to go to find an environment in which nature is thriving naturally, and learn some of the plants that are around you, because those can be super, super beneficial. So I have a little boy, he's 3 years old, and yesterday he got a yellow jacket, a little bee, a wasp really, stuck underneath his shirt. And this wasp stung him repeatedly again and again and again. He had 5 wasp stings underneath his armpit where the wasp had gotten trapped. And he was screaming in just horrible pain. And I looked around my yard for the first little plant that I can find called plantain. And plantain was called by the Native Americans white man's foot, because they said wherever the white man walked, it appeared. And it was not native to North America. It was a European plant that literally had followed the white man when they came to this land. But plantain is an absolutely amazing healer. And so the first thing I did was grab some plantain and just bite it with my teeth enough to kind of mash the plant and release its juices, and put it as a poultice right on his bee sting. And within a few minutes, it stops the pain and the histamine reaction of the body. And so that's just another example of like how it's not something I grew. It's just a weed that most people try to get rid of, but it has such beautiful medicinal properties. And so you don't have to have these elaborate gardens that are growing all of these medicinal plants. You can use something so simple as a weed to find healing medicine.
I love that, and so insightful it is. Also, uh, I totally agree with you, right? Weeds we often, just throw them away and, just cut them out. But that's so beautiful how you explained how they are also such a great part of our ecosystem. Also, let's talk about the blocks, because again, let's be honest, most of us bump into them. And what are the most common walls you see people hit on their healing journey? And how do people meet that resistance and those walls without shaming themselves, and rather, looking at it in a whole different way and working towards it?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest blocks, and this is what I always try to do in my clinical practice, is the biggest blocks is people try to change themselves too drastically instead of being kind to themselves and taking little baby steps. So, for instance, I had a client, a new patient in my clinic the other day, and while they had a number of health problems that we most certainly have to address, there was some more immediate things that we needed to address, like their water intake, which is greatly affecting their overall health, particularly their kidneys. And the client said, I just do not like to drink plain water. They like to drink a lot of soda, a lot of sugary drinks, and Gatorade, and you name it. They were drinking all of these fluids that were full of sugar, and none of it was just pure water. And the body needs to have some pure water for its proper healthy function. And so instead of saying, oh, you have to drink 32 ounces of water today or you can't fix your health, and then sending my client out feeling overwhelmed, trying to find a way to fit in 32 ounces of water into their daily routine, I said, we're going to start off. And for the first 2 weeks, I want you to drink 1 glass of water a day, 8 ounces. Simple, easy. This is also the same client that I made the vinegar extract for. We actually made an oxymel, which is a vinegar and honey mixture. So it's a little bit sweet. And to help them, because they really wanted flavoring, and I didn't want them to add flavoring that was unhealthy, we made that vinegar oxymel so that they could add a tablespoon of that into their water glass because it gives a really kind of nice, tangy, sweet flavor that's almost like a lemonade. And it was a baby step. It was a way to help them introduce a habit into their daily regimen that was easily actionable. Because if I had sent them out saying, you have to drink 32 ounces of water a day, they may never come back to me. But if I say, I want you to drink 1 8-ounce glass of water today, I give you a way to naturally flavor it, and also I'm adding in medicinal benefits simultaneously. And then I told them, do it 5 days a week and have 2 days off, because this drinking water was something that was really challenging for the client. So this example is simply to kind of paint a picture of, if you have this lofty goal of something that you want to accomplish, like say it's quitting smoking, going cold turkey is very, very challenging. But if you say, I'm going to smoke one less cigarette every week and go one by one and take these small actionable steps and be kind to yourself instead of criticizing yourself and hating yourself for your bad habit, be kind, understand how you got there in life, and understand a healthy, happy path to getting out of that situation. So many times people come into my clinic and they have a whole slew of health problems. I have never seen anybody come into my clinic and they have one and only one problem. They may come into my clinic thinking they have only one problem, which is the most predominant one that's in their face. But as we do our intake and we talk, we realize that there's really 10, maybe even 12 things that they need to work on. But I'm not going to send them out of my clinic working on all 12 of those. We're going to pick one and we're going to start there. And then we're going to get to a point where you feel like you're successful, because being successful with something gives you pride and it makes you want to try again at something else so that you can be successful at that as well. And so when you're trying to make changes, think about breaking it down into the simplest steps possible so that you can feel successful and eventually achieve the larger goal.
I love that reframe. And yes, that is such a great way to start with, and to uh, face the resistance that is there, and the shame and the criticism that people put on themselves. Your work lives in this beautiful intersection of science and spirituality. And I find that so fascinating because the blend is so beautiful. How do you balance those two worlds without losing the magic of either? Like, how do you get in through that blend that is there?
So I think that it starts again with these small little things, like you said, the word reframing of a mindset. So for instance, back to the client that didn't like to drink water. One of the things that I gave them on their action steps was a reframing phrase. I said, the phrase was, I am putting this in my body for my body's health. And I said, you have to separate. You said, this you're putting in your body for your body's health, and then these things you're putting in your body for your pleasure. And you need to start looking at separating them. And in its subtlest sense, it is a spiritual quality to something that's very scientifically proven, like a reframing of the mind. But what we're doing is we're accessing a subtle layer of somebody's self where they're recognizing that their body is not just here for pleasure, it is also here for something else. And so when I'm working with clients, because most of them do not have the spiritual background that I have, I am slowly infusing these larger spiritual concepts in a very, very small sort of way by adding these little meditative practices that start the person on a journey of potentially meditation in the future if they're not currently doing it by having a little bit of a mindful practice. Like when you sit down to eat dinner, if you're always in a rush, and so therefore you don't chew your food very well, it can cause a lot of digestive problems. And so you can bring in a spiritual, mindful practice of sitting down and telling yourself, I have all of the time I need to eat my food. This is for my body and my health. And in 10 minutes, I will do something else that is for somebody else, but for right now, this is me. And on the outside, those may not look like spiritual practices, but they are deeply spiritual practices that start to direct a person inward instead of outward.
That's so powerful. And yeah, that's great. Also, let's zoom out because wellness right now is loud. Okay, there's so much advice, so many trends, and people are exhausted and confused at the same time, right? How can someone cut through the noise and figure out what truly works for them, or what is that one simplistic thing that you would suggest to them to cut through that noise and do what is actually needed?
So first, I would not listen to or follow any kinds of trends. If there's this trend that's coming out that says such and such herb is so good for your health, you have to try it. It does all these wonderful things. First start with most clinical trials when they say that an herb is effective. If an herb is effective for 35 to 50% of the people in a clinical trial, that is considered an effective herb. But you're thinking that worked for 50% of the people. So that's only half of the tested population. What works for one person is not going to work for everybody. And so we get caught up in these fads thinking, oh, it worked for this person, it's going to work for me. And then we get disappointed when it doesn't. So we have to step back and recognize that what worked for somebody isn't necessarily going to work for me. And then the next task is finding what is going to work for you. And this goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, and this is an inner voice. And sometimes it can be as simply as something as, you know what? I'm always in a rush, and what is best for me is to spend 30 seconds 3 times a day stepping outside of my busy life and taking a deep breath. And sometimes that 30 seconds of deep breathing can be more powerful healing tool than any supplement or any fad in the world. There's real magic in just the simplest things. And part of what our modern society gets us caught up in is this idea of this kind of consumerism. If I buy this product, I'm going to be like that person that I see on TV. But you're not, because you're you. And it gets you caught in the cycle of having to work more, to spend more, to not get the results that you want. So step back inside yourself and give yourself just a really clear assessment and say, what can I do for myself in which does not require me to buy a single thing? And
Mm,
that can be the most powerful healing tool. When you can find a way to heal yourself without buying a single thing, you've really found the true key to healing.
That lands so deeply and so true, right? It's such a great advice, and yeah, that's so wonderful. Thank you, Bonnie, for this soul nourishing conversation. You've reminded us that healing, it isn't just about fixing, it's also about remembering what's already ours and what is already around us. And to you listening, your body is wise, your breath, your choices, your connection to earth, your surrounding, everything is wise. That's where the medicine lives. Start small, trust yourself, and let it unfold. I'm Pragya Malvia, and this has been Divine Decode. Until next time, stay curious, stay rooted, and as always, stay divine. Thank you.